Mera had grown accustomed to the serene silence of the vast universe, but this time, that silence was shattered by distant explosions, the deafening sound of intense artillery fire from enemy warships. A plasma storm traced bright diagonal lines through space as bursts of light exploded near Mera's spacecraft. He, a young and talented pilot of the Human Alliance, was skillfully maneuvering the experimental Sapphire Wing spacecraft in a way that few could match. The Sapphire Wing was not just any ordinary warship. Equipped with cutting-edge technology that even alien warriors had never seen, this ship could control quantum and plasma energy at levels that Galaxian warships could not anticipate. The strategies Mera employed were not typical tactics the enemy had encountered. He was not only fighting with skill but also with intelligence, exploiting the limitless potential of the technology at his disposal. Mera glanced at the control screen in front of him, quickly analyzing data from the radar system and identifying weaknesses in the enemy's fleet. What he referred to as quantum filaments was a system of energy waves generated from a complex quantum model, capable of slicing through or disrupting the structure of enemy spaceships without direct contact. Each shot was not a normal plasma beam but a series of unpredictable energy waves. They cut through cosmic materials and pierced the armor of Galaxian warships effortlessly. The enemy, the Galaxians, with their massive warships and advanced weapons, never expected humanity to possess such superior technology. The Galaxian fleet, proud of its destructive power, was now facing an unforeseen force. One of the Galaxian commanders, General Kor, stood in the command center of the warship Iron Tyrant, watching the battle unfold on the screen, his heart filled with fury. How can humanity possess this kind of weapon? Kor bellowed. He could see his warships cracking and sustaining damage after only a few shots from Mera's ship. Increase the defense, all fronts. Kor ordered. However, Mera was not merely a pilot with powerful weapons. He understood that victory in this battle was not solely dependent on strength but also on creativity and adaptability in tactics. He used the very plasma energy fired at him by the enemy to create a counter-defense grid, turning it into a source of abundant energy. The attacks from the Galaxian warships were no longer threats to him but opportunities for Mera to turn them into advantages. Counterattack immediately. Mera thought as his ship was enveloped in energy waves, forming a plasma shield that no enemy could break through. He retaliated, the plasma beams from his quantum filaments not only piercing through the Galaxian ships but also attacking their control systems. The enemy appeared unable to react in time. Kor, while commanding, realized the situation was growing more dire. The Galaxian warships were not only being easily destroyed but were also falling into a state of paralysis. "We are being attacked from within," Kor shouted in panic, trying to coordinate with his generals to stabilize the situation. But Mera did not stop. He continued to implement his energy counterattack tactic. When a Galaxian warship launched a powerful plasma strike toward him, he used the very energy to create a vortex of energy that repelled the enemy and caused it to explode right before his eyes. Mera felt the tension in space, but his composure never wavered. He glanced at the battlefield map on his screen, where the Galaxian warships were slowly retreating, no longer strong enough to continue the fight. At this moment, Mera knew they had gained the upper hand, but he still needed to keep fighting, not just to defeat the enemy but to protect his home planet. Kor finally ordered a retreat. The Galaxian warships, although powerful, could not withstand the creativity and full utilization of technology by Mera. Mera was not just a skilled pilot but a clever strategist who knew how to exploit the enemy's tactical weaknesses. The battle was over, but Mera did not rejoice in victory. He knew this was just the beginning of the war. humanity had entered a conflict that no one could foresee the brutality of. Enemies like the Galaxians were just a part of a larger plan that he could not yet comprehend. But one thing was certain, Mera would continue to fight for the survival of humanity. Mera could feel the air becoming suffocating as his hands gripped the controls of the Sapphire wing, the spacecraft speeding into the combat zone. After the intense battles with the Galaxian warships, he thought that things were finally stabilizing, at least for now, until a massive silhouette appeared on his radar screen. It was the Dreadnought. A colossal warship, powerful and 3 times the size of any ship Mera had ever faced. It was the symbol of the Galaxian fleet's ultimate power, equipped with weapons of mass destruction that no one dared to imagine. With its indestructible armor and advanced control systems, the Dreadnought was not just a warship, it was a mobile fortress designed to crush any force that dared to stand before it. If the Dreadnought entered the fray, it would mark the end of any hope left for the human alliance. But Mera was not someone who easily backed down. He knew this battle would be the greatest challenge he had ever faced, not just because of the ship's size, but because of the advanced warfare technologies that the Dreadnought possessed. The Dreadnought was no ordinary warship. It was equipped with a quantum core, a technology so complex that few understood it, and almost no one knew how to defeat it. This was the most powerful energy source the Galaxians had ever developed, capable of manipulating space and time in the vicinity of the warship. If Mera could not find a way to counter the quantum core, victory would be impossible. He looked at the display screen and immediately realized that the Dreadnought not only moved like a monstrous behemoth but also deployed relentless plasma attacks. Intense plasma beams streaked across space, creating bright diagonal trails, forming a chaotic and dangerous scene. Mera took a deep breath, adjusted the ship's controls, and began to think. This was not the time to rely solely on firepower. He needed a different strategy, an untested approach that could also be his only chance at victory. The Lazarus Protocol. This was a technology that only the most elite pilots could use. It allowed the operator to connect directly with the quantum core of the spacecraft, granting them control over the reality around them. It was an extremely complex protocol, requiring total concentration and the ability to process information far beyond what an ordinary human could handle. But Mera had been preparing for this moment for a long time. He had tested the Lazarus Protocol in smaller skirmishes, but never against a behemoth like the Dreadnought. Mera activated the protocol, and in an instant, he felt the powerful energy from the Sapphire Wing's quantum core flow into his body. The space around him seemed to ripple, everything turning into a chaotic energy matrix. He was no longer just controlling the spacecraft, he began to perceive and understand the very space and time around him. He focused on the plasma beams rushing toward him. Before his eyes, space seemed to unfold layer by layer, each plasma beam turning into a path to follow. Mera began to maneuver his spacecraft through the gaps between the beams as if he were playing a high-stakes game in the vastness of space. He was no longer just evading, now, he was perceiving every move in a controlled space, as if dancing through a vibrant energy-filled environment. The ship twisted and turned, changing direction quickly every time a massive plasma beam from the Dreadnought shot toward him. Mera was no longer just avoiding the attacks, he was moving unpredictably, creating flight paths that no one could anticipate. Despite the Dreadnought's overwhelming power, Mera had connected with his ship's quantum core, allowing him to control not just the ship but the space around him. The Dreadnought, with all its might, could never have predicted that Mera could control reality in such a way. The attacks from the massive ship became less effective as Mera kept disappearing just before the plasma beams hit. He had learned to read the movements of space and time, and now he was turning that ability to his advantage. With the persistence and strength provided by the Lazarus Protocol, Mera drew closer to the dreadnought. He discovered a weak spot in the ship, a small gap between the armor layers. This was where quantum energy waves could penetrate. Mera did not hesitate. He focused all the energy of the sapphire wing and used his quantum filaments to create an attack that would pierce through the dreadnought's armor. A massive explosion erupted, and the colossal dreadnought began to tilt. Its control systems were crippled, and the plasma attacks from the Galaxian warships ceased entirely. The Galaxian fleet lost control of the situation, and within minutes, all their ships began retreating, leaving Mera and his ship in the silent void of space. Mera had no time to celebrate the victory. He knew that this triumph was just the first step in a long and brutal war. But at least, he had proven one thing: no matter how powerful the enemy was, humanity could overcome it as long as they remained resilient and creative. He gazed at the vastness of space ahead, where the dreadnought now floated as a pile of debris. The battle had ended, but the war with the Galaxians and the other threats was only just beginning. Mera still felt the exhaustion from the recent battle weighing heavily on his body. Although the victory had been resounding, he knew it was just a small step in the long journey ahead. The strong sense of triumph hadn't even faded when he was called back to the Earth military headquarters. What had once seemed like a safe haven was now the center of endless discoveries about his abilities he hadn't even fully realized he possessed. As he walked into the conference room, a cold, high-tech space lit by the bright glow of advanced screens, Mera's eyes met the worried faces of military experts. Colonel Haskins stood at the head of the table, his sharp eyes never leaving the display screen. "Mera, you've done something extraordinary," Haskins began, his voice calm but laced with seriousness. "I'm not just talking about taking down the dreadnought. You've done something that even the best of us can't quite comprehend." Mera stood still, eyes fixed on the screens where the battle data continued to run. The information not only related to the fight itself but also analyzed his unique abilities. After battling the dreadnought and performing the Lazarus Protocol, the experts had uncovered something unexpected. A team of scientists, led by Dr. Elisa Wren, a quantum theory expert, began presenting their findings. "We've analyzed the battle data and concluded that you didn't just control the spacecraft. You were able to influence the quantum energy fields that both the Galaxian warships and their weapons rely on." Mera couldn't believe his ears. He had only thought he was using advanced technology, a technology that only the most experienced warriors could understand. But now, it seemed that things were much more complex than he had imagined. Dr. Wren continued, "Mera, this ability of yours isn't some random coincidence. Recent genetic studies suggest that some people, including you, have the ability to connect with these quantum energy fields. This isn't technology that humans can easily wield, it's embedded in your DNA." A wave of confusion washed over Mera's mind. He had never considered that he might possess abilities beyond what an average pilot could do. But Dr. Wren's words made him reconsider everything. "We've researched and found that these genetic markers have existed in humans for thousands of years. They've been hidden in our genes, and up until now, they've gone undetected. But here's what astonishes us even more: the aliens, the Galaxians, they've known about this for a long time." Mera flinched. "What do you mean? They knew about this human ability?" "Yes. We've found several clues in the documents we've collected from previous encounters. They didn't come to invade just to take our resources, they came for another reason. They knew that humans had untapped potential and ability that could shift the balance of the war between species. And they've been trying to suppress its development." A clear picture began to form in Mera's mind. For years, the Galaxians had invaded Earth not only to seize resources but also to prevent the development of humans who could connect with quantum energy fields. But this also raised a major question: why had this ability been hidden within humanity for so long? Dr. Wren continued, it's possible that these genes were interfered with by forces in the past, meant to control or even erase this ability. We don't know for sure, but the truth is, those who possess abilities like yours could completely change the course of this war. Mera felt as though the world around him was becoming increasingly surreal. He was no longer just an ordinary pilot. He was no longer merely a soldier fighting an enemy. He was now part of an ancient secret, a power that the invaders knew about and were trying to prevent. Haskins finally spoke up, his voice resolute, we need to dig deeper into this. If what Dr. Wren is saying is true, Mera isn't just a weapon for the Earth military. He's the key to unlocking a new strategy, and possibly the only hope we have. A heavy pressure weighed on Mera. What he had done in the recent battle was no longer just the action of a pilot, it was part of a revolution in warfare. He could no longer simply be a fighter. He had to learn to control and develop the latent power within himself. Before Mera could think further, Dr. Wren continued, Mera, we have a plan. If you're ready, we'll help you develop this ability. It won't be easy. You'll face challenges that no one has ever encountered before. But if you succeed, you'll become part of a new military force, one that can change everything. Dr. Wren's words were not just a promise. They were a call to action, a challenge for Mera to face a power he had never known. And in that moment, Mera understood that this war wasn't just about protecting his planet. It was about unlocking a potential that neither Earth nor the universe had ever imagined. Mera stepped out of the spacecraft, his eyes cold with determination, the distant starlight shimmering on his face. His body no longer felt the fatigue from the intense battles, but in his heart, a sense of unease began to rise. The journey he and his team had embarked on had led them to a temporary Galaxian research station, where he could clearly sense that something was terribly wrong. His team, an elite squad of Earth's military forces, including seasoned soldiers and strategic scientists, gathered in the small briefing room aboard the spacecraft. They were all silent, waiting for the next set of orders. Mera, we are infiltrating this facility and gathering intelligence, Colonel Haskins said. Our mission is to uncover the truth about the experiments the Galaxians are conducting. Our intelligence suggests something is off, and we need to decode what that is. Mera nodded, his mind heavy with tension. He couldn't stop thinking about what he had discovered earlier. His ability to connect with quantum fields had become a key part of his journey, but what he had learned about the Galaxian experiments could change everything. There was something much larger at stake, something threatening humanity, and he had to uncover it. With his team, Mera made their way toward the Galaxian research station, a vast structure located between two planets in a remote region, hidden from easy detection. This station, built in the void of space, seemed like the perfect place for the experiments the enemy was conducting. The entrance to the facility had no obvious defense systems, but Mera knew it was a trap, a deceptive calm. Ships could easily approach, only to fall into the hands of invaders. As Mera's team passed through the control gates of the facility, everything felt wrong. The Galaxian laboratories were unlike any human research facility. It was a maze of vast corridors filled with strange devices, odd glowing screens, and secretive laboratories where horrific experiments were taking place. Specimens from various creatures, mysterious energies, and human bodies trapped in large glass tanks created a grim scene. Mera, we've arrived, one team member said. Be careful. These biotanks might be where the experiments are happening. Entering a large laboratory, Mera felt the air grow dense and oppressive. The biotanks held humans trapped in transparent cocoons, immobile, stuck in a state of unconsciousness. Mera shuddered. These were the experiments the Galaxians had conducted on humanity, bodies that were the products of brutal research, victims of a horrifying campaign the enemy had carried out in the dark. "They've turned us into lab rats," Mera whispered, his eyes burning with anger. "We can't let this continue." At that moment, a voice echoed from the darkness of the corridor. Mera turned and saw a woman step out from a small room at the end of the hall. She wore a simple lab coat, but her eyes were filled with worry. It was Dr. Nash, a scientist Mera had heard of before, someone who had gone missing months ago when the war with the Galaxians began. She had been researching the genetic markers in humans that could connect with quantum energy fields. "Mera," Dr. Nash said, her voice hoarse with anxiety, "I never expected you would find me. I've been held captive here. The Galaxians are studying the latent abilities in human bodies, abilities that can connect with quantum energy. But they're not just exploiting them, they're trying to destroy them." Mera approached her, his eyes full of disbelief. "How do you know this? What are they doing to us? They're not just experimenting to harness energy. They want to erase any trace of this ability in the human body. These genetic experiments aren't about understanding and developing human potential, they're about controlling and destroying it," Dr. Nash explained. "They are manipulating human DNA, altering genetic structures, and creating people completely severed from the energy potential they have." A wave of anger surged within Mera. He had known that the Galaxians hadn't invaded Earth just for resources or military power. Their true goal was to control and destroy a latent power within humanity, a power that could alter the course of the intergalactic war. "They've falsified experimental results to create fabricated conclusions," Dr. Nash continued. "But there's a small group of humans, those with this special ability, who are still alive. And they're holding them here, in these biotanks. They hope to weaken humanity's abilities and use them as weapons." Mera could feel the tension in the air. He knew time was running out, and they couldn't allow these experiments to continue. But the mission had shifted. This was no longer just about uncovering the truth. Now, it had become a life and death struggle to save the humans trapped in the biotanks and stop the dark experiments of the Galaxians. "We have to rescue these people," Mera declared, his gaze steely with resolve. "We can't let the Galaxians continue their atrocities." Dr. Nash nodded. "I know where they're keeping them. But we have to act fast. If we don't, we won't make it in time before the Galaxians complete their experiments." Mera looked at his team and nodded. "Let's move now. We don't have time to waste." Mera stood in the dark room of the Galaxian research facility, listening intently to every word Dr. Nash spoke. What she was revealing made him feel like he was standing on the edge of a monumental shift. His heart raced, yet his mind remained in turmoil. A world-shattering secret, one that neither he nor the world had ever known, was slowly coming to light. Dr. Nash, the woman who had been imprisoned at this facility for so long, was no longer just a scientist. She held one of the most crucial pieces of knowledge about humanity's future, a knowledge that, if understood and applied correctly, could change not only the course of the war but the entire existence of the universe itself. "We've been mistaken," Dr. Nash began, her voice quivering in the silent space. "We thought the genetic modifications that Galaxian is researching were meant to erase human capabilities. But the truth is, they are trying to awaken a tremendous potential we've never known." Mera remained silent, listening, the suffocating feeling spreading throughout his body. He had always thought that the special abilities he possessed, his ability to control and connect with quantum energy fields, were just a random event, a surprise he had to learn to control. But now, what Dr. Nash was saying was upending every hypothesis he had ever held. These experiments aren't to eliminate human abilities, Dr. Nash continued, her eyes full of strain. They are trying to unlock the true potential within us. Those who can control reality through quantum consciousness will be the bridge between organic life and a new dimension, a dimension no longer bound by the laws of ordinary physics. Mera felt as if he were being drawn into a vortex, where everything around him became hazy. He recalled the previous battles, the moments when he used his quantum abilities to alter the flow of the war. But now, he understood that this was just a fraction of the latent power humanity could possess. What Galaxian was trying to do was accelerate this awakening so they could control and weaponize it. They don't just want to invade Earth, Mera said, his voice growing heavier. They want to control humanity's abilities and turn us into tools for their use. Exactly, Dr. Nash replied. But what we didn't realize is that this ability isn't a weapon. It's part of the human evolutionary process. These abilities can help us not only control technology, but also control reality. We can change space and time, even recreate reality at will. The room seemed to freeze in that moment. Mera could feel the intensity building within him. What Dr. Nash was describing was an awakening, a transformation, not just for him, but for all of humanity. It was unimaginable power, a connection to the universe that humanity had never been aware of before. Mera could feel something shifting inside him, a part of him that he had never known was slowly coming to life. So what do we do now? Mera asked, unable to hide his concern. If we can control reality, we can change the outcome of this war, right? We don't just change the war, Dr. Nash responded. We can change everything. We can create a new world, a world where humanity is no longer confined by rigid physical laws. But to do that, we must learn how to control our abilities, and we have to do this before Galaxian can use them to dominate the entire universe. Mera pondered her words. He had always thought that the war with Galaxian was just a struggle over resources, military power. But now, he realized that this wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a war to liberate humanity's true potential, to allow humans to rise up and reshape their future. So what can we do right now? Mera asked, his tone resolute. Can we start experimenting with these abilities? Dr. Nash nodded, her eyes gleaming with hope. Yes, but we must be careful. Awakening this potential isn't a simple process. It requires preparation and absolute control. If not, we could trigger irreversible destruction. Mera stood up, his resolve unwavering. He knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he also understood that this was humanity's chance to rise, to affirm a power and potential that could never be stopped. A new door to the universe was opening, and he was the one stepping through it. Our awakening has begun, Mera said, his eyes blazing. And we will not let Galaxian or anyone else stand in our way. With that determination, Mera and his team began their journey not just to fight, but to reshape reality, to unleash humanity's latent power, to remake the universe in their image. As the war raged on, the atmosphere at Mera's military base was charged with tension. The prophecy of humanity's awakening had come true, and Mera couldn't stop thinking about the immense responsibility he and his comrades now bore. Reality was beginning to change before their eyes, and it wasn't a subtle shift. The newfound power in their hands could not only change the course of the war, but it could also alter the very fabric of the universe itself. As the Galaxian ships entered orbit, Ready to launch the great battle, Mera stood on the bridge of his experimental spacecraft. He could feel the tension in the crew below, all waiting for his command. This feeling, though unfamiliar, seemed oddly familiar. He could hear the sharp intakes of breath, the slow, deliberate footsteps, and the hum of machinery all around him. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was part of something far greater than himself. Mera glanced around. His awakened comrades, the ones who could control and connect with quantum energy fields, were ready. Some of them were pilots, elite warriors who had previously only known how to control the advanced human warships. But now, they were new warriors, wielding an unimaginable power that could completely alter the flow of battle. The Galaxian ships, with their massive designs and advanced technology, were steadily advancing toward Earth. Mera could see from a distance the blazing plasma columns extending from the enemy's warships, like sharp swords poised to strike. But this time, humanity would not stand idly by. "Open the awakening gate," Mera commanded, his voice booming through the ship's communication system. This wasn't just the order to begin the battle, it was a reminder of a power they hadn't yet fully tested. He didn't know if it would work, but he understood that there was no other choice. Immediately, the awakened pilots began to connect with the quantum energy fields, sending invisible signals into the vastness of space, interacting with the universe's energy. Mera felt that stream of energy like an electric current running through his body, and he closed his eyes, trying to control that energy as he had before. But this time, he wasn't merely reacting to external influences. He was actively creating change, bending and reshaping the space around him. The Galaxian ships began to experience a strange paralysis. The once sharp and powerful plasma beams suddenly grew dull, warping as if they no longer existed in this reality. The massive warships, with their dense defensive systems, started to wobble, losing balance, as if the space around them had been torn apart. The human ships did not cease their movement. They soared through space like ghosts, moving at speeds that defied all known physical laws. Collisions with the Galaxian ships were no longer simple explosions but distortions in the very nature of reality. Mera could see that the Galaxian ships were no longer controlled by the usual commands of their pilots, but appeared to be dominated by an invisible force, the quantum power that the awakened ones could control. "We're not just defeating them, we're warping their reality," Mera thought, a surge of tension and excitement flooding through him. He wasn't just fighting the enemy, he was fighting to reshape this universe. As Mera's fleet sliced through the Galaxian ships, devastating strikes began to emerge. One of the larger Galaxian ships was pushed out of orbit, breaking apart in space as the human quantum fields connected with its engine core and rendered it inoperable. Another ship, after being struck from behind, suddenly lost control and spun out of control, crashing into its own warships. Mera could sense the panic aboard the Galaxian ships. The signals from their commanders began to go haywire, no longer able to maintain unified control. The Galaxian generals aboard their command ships began to realize they were losing control of the battle. Something enormous and beyond their comprehension was happening. The awakened humans weren't just controlling technology, they were controlling reality, distorting everything the enemy had once believed was invincible. A massive explosion rang out as a Galaxian command ship was struck, destroying its entire command system. Mera could see, from a distance, the giant ship tumbling through space, no longer able to resist. "This is it," Mera whispered, his eyes shining with determination. "We're not just winning. We're changing this entire universe." As the remaining Galaxian ships began to retreat, unable to withstand the ever-growing power of the awakened humans, Mera knew something monumental had taken place. It wasn't just a battle won, it was the dawn of a new era for humanity. But deep down, he understood that this war was only the beginning. Humanity was no longer just facing Galaxian, it was facing a vast, unknown world where they would have to learn how to live with the power they had just awakened. The universe was no longer a place with boundaries. Boundaries were now a mere concept. And humanity, with all its untapped potential, would become the ones to reshape this reality. As Mera's ship landed firmly on the ground, the sound of the engines gradually faded, leaving only the soft footsteps of the astronauts. Part of Mera knew that the war with the Galaxian was far from over, but another part of him understood that the most important thing now was the future. Humanity had just entered a new era, one where space and time were no longer fixed concepts. It was a tremendous opportunity for growth, but it also carried with it countless unforeseen dangers. Mera stepped out of the spacecraft, his eyes scanning the surroundings. The ground where he stood had been transformed, no longer just buildings and roads, but now a vast training center where humanity's quantum abilities would be honed and harnessed. The research stations humans had built long ago no longer served their original purpose. The massive structures, once designed for scientific research and experiments, had now become specialized training centers where the awakened individuals would learn how to control the powerful quantum energy within their bodies. Mera and his comrades had already gone through this process, but he knew the road ahead would be long and full of challenges. Mera, a familiar voice cut through his thoughts. He turned to see Dr. Nash approaching. Dr. Nash was one of the first to recognize humanity's potential to connect with quantum energy, and she had played a pivotal role in unlocking the door that led to the global awakening. "We've succeeded," she said, her eyes gleaming with belief and hope. "But this is only the beginning. The power we now hold has the potential to change the entire course of this universe." Mera nodded. He looked around and realized that not only humans, but also the Galaxian were present. After years of confrontation and conflict, humans and Galaxian had finally found common ground. The Galaxian leaders, who had once viewed humanity as a threat, now no longer carried their arrogant demeanor. Instead, there was empathy and cooperation. The Galaxian, despite their superior technology, could not alter the fundamental laws of the universe. They had witnessed the immense power that the awakened humans could wield, and they realized that they could learn from and cooperate with humanity to harness that power sustainably. That's why they had taken the initiative to propose the establishment of a Quantum Cooperation Council, an international organization that would connect the civilizations of both humans and Galaxian to develop and share knowledge about quantum energy. Mera and his comrades had become models of awakening, not only capable of controlling technology but also able to alter reality itself. They were no longer just warriors, now, they were leaders in a revolution of consciousness and energy. However, for Mera, despite understanding that a peaceful life was essential, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Humanity's awakening was not just a monumental milestone in history, it was also an enormous challenge. The powers they now possessed were no longer confined to a small group. All of humanity would have to learn how to coexist with these abilities, and Mera knew that not everyone would use them responsibly. He turned back to Dr. Nash, his eyes full of unspoken questions. "Do you think we're ready? We have the power, but can we control it?" Dr. Nash smiled, though her gaze was full of contemplation. "We're not fully ready, Mera. The awakening has only just begun. Humanity has changed, but we must change the way we think as well. Power is not something that can be easily controlled. We need a system to monitor and guide this development. Otherwise, it will be no different than a double-edged sword." Mera sighed. He understood exactly what she was saying. While they had won and awakened an extraordinary ability, mastering this power would be an even greater challenge. A new monitoring system needed to be established, but that was no simple task. Mera worried not only about whether humanity could control itself but also whether they would have enough time to learn and adapt before new threats emerged. In the distance, a group of Galaxian scientists and leaders were approaching. Among them was Zildar, the head of the Galaxian quantum research team. He had witnessed humanity's power in the previous battle and recognized that cooperation between the two species was not just an option, it was an urgent necessity. "We can help," Zildar said, his voice deep and serious. "But we cannot change everything. We can share our knowledge on how to control quantum energy, but you must learn to master it." Mera looked at Zildar, sensing the sincerity in his words. Although the cooperation between the two species was unprecedented in history, at this moment, it was the only path forward to build a sustainable future. Mera turned to look at his comrades, the humans who had awakened and connected with quantum energy. Part of him felt proud of what they had achieved, but another part was filled with concern. They had changed, but would they be able to maintain that change without letting it spiral out of control? The universe was vast and full of mysteries, but now humanity had an unprecedented opportunity to explore it. The war with the Galaxian was over, but humanity's journey had only just begun. And Mera, along with his comrades, would face new challenges, not just confronting enemies, but confronting themselves and the immense powers they now held.